Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about My Adventures with Superman Season 2, Episode 8. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately picking up in the aftermath of where Episode 6 ended, as well as Episode 7, with Kara meeting up with Jimmy, Lois, Mala, and Brain. And obviously Jimmy's excited to see Kara's excited to see him, and it ends up being this whole thing of like the person who's not excited to see her is Lois, but obviously she still has her reluctancy when it comes to Kara. But Jimmy's like, come on, like, let's kind of give her a chance. They had this whole conversation last episode of, yeah, she might have been the one that kidnapped Clark, but for her it's like, right, her entire world has gotten turned upside down because what she believed for so long has turned out to be a lie now, and she's still trying to justify. She's like, right, must be something wrong with father. He must be malfunctioning. That's all she can really think. It's like, right, because he's always been the kind father that she's always known, not realizing like how much horrible stuff he's made her do, because he reveals to her like, right, I've wiped your memory time and time and time again for the purposes of bending you to my will. He's like, it was easier when you were younger, but now that you grow older, you deviate more and more from your path. Because she wasn't all like immediately like, oh, let's destroy these planets. It's not in her nature. It is that nurture versus nature, but it didn't even nurture because it's pure mind control, because she needed to be the Kryptonian he wanted her to be. And despite him raising her, she was never the one that's like, oh, let's burn this planet to the ground, because she found these different planets that she thought like, oh, they were this, they were that, they were beautiful. But for him, it's like, you kept coming back to me with planets that don't serve the greater purpose, that would do nothing for like a Krypton 2.0. And I wonder if he looks at Earth as kind of like that final piece of like, no, this will be the new Krypton. Kind of like the I don't know if like the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, it's been so long. I don't even know if I've seen any of them all the way through. I've seen good chunks of them, but it was also when I was like super young, so I haven't seen them now that I'm older. But obviously I think of like Man of Steel. That whole storyline was about the Kryptonians terraforming Earth to become the new Krypton. So I wonder, is that going to be what Brainiac ultimately ends up doing? Like he none of these planets were sustainable enough. None of the people were worth anything to be the true like new Kryptonian. So I wonder, he's going to terraform the planet, wipe out the humans, and kind of rebuild Krypton from there. Obviously in his image. So at the same time this is all going down, our crew is plotting how to save Clark. At the same time, especially considering the episode's called The Death of Clark Kent, obviously playing into a little bit of like, oh yeah, the death of Superman, but this is very specifically like not the death of Clark Kent, because Brainiac has to kill that part of him so that he can hijack his body, which someone has to let me know in the comments. What is Clark's like history with being mind controlled? Like in regards of like, I know it happens in different stories, because the one I was thinking of was like, well, I know Zod possessed his body in Smallville. He had to kind of slightly contend with that situation in Superman and Lois, when it was like Taro's father was trying to like basically possess him in that regard. I swear, because Brainiac's kind of trying to pull like a Zod slash oh god, what's his face? Captain Ginyu from DBZ. Trying to switch bodies. But like my point for bringing that up is because I know, like I brought it up in a previous episode or two, like, right, he's weak to magic, but that hasn't really come up in the show so far. I'm curious, like, I wonder, does he naturally have like a weakness to mind control or something like that? I'm sure he's been mind controlled, or is that something like he has developed like a defense for that in the comics, where it's just like, no, like, or does he because when it comes to intelligence and mental fortitude, like, I guess it just depends on where he is in his story, but like Clark is like really smart more often than not, and he is like, I don't know like how super his brain is, and I'm sure even that can like vary from continuity to continuity. I don't think he's like a super genius, but like I said, like his processing and mental fortitude has always been pretty strong, because he has the strength of will, which, I mean, he held out a good chunk against Brainiac as he was going through his memories. Because it was actually made me think of like the Taro situation in Superman and Lois when he was going through Clark's memories. I thought that was kind of pretty neat, where it's like, oh, here's some scenes we had seen previously, but now we have more context and it's extended out. Plus, here's some stuff we didn't get to see. So like his early days as like Superman and his first introduction to Lois as both Clark and Superman. So I think that's kind of neat. Kind of, it almost parallels that in the same regard. It was like a device similarly enough. But it's like, in this case, Brainiac's going through memories. It's like, oh, when he fought Livewire, which is so interesting, too, considering, like, she kind of helped last episode to send the crew after to help the crew go after you and save you. So that's interesting. There's also, you went up against this great foe, which was Parasite, but you still managed to win. And that's the thing. It's like, right, these people would outmatch you physically, but then at the last minute you'd get a boost your strength. Like, where does that come from? And then he pieces it together. It's like, oh, Lois and Jimmy are like the key to your strength. And eventually kind of saying like, right, your greatest strength is also your weakness. Because he's like, and then he goes to like the season 1 finale, and it's like, you're so desperate to protect your mind from protect them from me. But he was like, no, that anguish in your eyes, you're actually protecting them from yourself, because you love them so deeply, you want to protect them. But he plays into the insecurity Clark has had more recently, where, oh, but you're afraid that they don't love you. And so it's sad that the recent events have kind of like psychically worn Clark down. I mean, once again, it's a culmination of, you feel like the people, once again, you love them, but now you're kind of questioning, but like, do they love me? You know, I know how I feel about them, but like, now I'm kind of wondering, like, a lot of my insecurities, the way some people are attacking you, calling you an alien, like you don't belong here, even though you've lived this is the only world you've ever known. You might be a Kryptonian, but you don't know Krypton. Even at, like, you only learned about Krypton a tiny bit this season. It's still such a foreign place to you. And even when you do learn about it, it's still, Earth is still your home. So it is a situation for Clark still trying to push through, as Brainiac is like rewiring his and restructuring his memories to fit the narrative he needs of like, oh, like Lois said these horrible things to you. Like all the insecurities that Clark has, like Lois is saying them, and he's feeling so other. He felt like he belonged to such an extent, but now it just feels like this is the season that makes him feel the most like an alien. He was able to kind of put a lot of that aside and just be himself, because it seemed like everyone liked him for being himself. Obviously, he had to keep the secret identity, but those close to him accepted him. But, you know, Kara in episode 6 was like, yo, your parents made you hide who you were. Oh, like, now Brainiac's like, oh, look at Jimmy and Lois. But specifically Lois, because she's the foundation. Like, you crack that, you crack everything else. Because his love for Lois is so big that it's like, you mess that up, the dominoes fall all across the board, and it just makes him submit more mentally to you. But Clark is still pushing back. He's actually taking control of the mind wipe, and it's like, this isn't what's real. And he goes back to like the episode with Mr. Mixopedalich, where it's like, nah, this is real, where him and Lois kiss, and she's like, you're amazing. He's like, this is real. But he's like, sure, but are you sure? And then start rewiring all these other memories. It's like, right, there was a council of Loises that were trying to kill you because you're kind of evil in all other universes, and then your Lois is saying this stuff. The moment her dad's attacking you in the season 1 finale, she's firing. It's like, none of that's real, but it's like, no. It's the point is to wear him down mentally. It's putting such a strain on his brain, once again playing into his insecurities. And then the coup d'etat was taking him to a real memory, and that was episode 5, where she broke up with him. Once again, Clark's not knowing the other side of it. It's like he's thinking like, oh, she doesn't want to be with me because of what I am. And it's like, in one regard, because in some regard, yes, but it's because she feels like because of who and what you are, she's not good enough for you. They both feel like they're not good enough for each other, sadly. Even though you are destined to be. You're like one of the it couples in comics. But it's just heartbreaking to see Brainiac kind of be able to wear him down, even though Clark's pushes back, and for a moment he thinks he escapes. But then it's like, wait, why are you back on Earth? I was like, you're still trapped. And then he runs to his family. He's thinking it's Ma and Pa Kent. but it's like, nope, it's Jor-El, Laura, and Kara's dad, and Kara herself, and it's almost like, oh, kind of leaning into like, it's replacing what he had on Earth with what he could have had on Krypton, and using that as the foundation of keeping Clark buried. Like, right, bury and destroy Clark Kent. This is Kal-El, and Kal-El's latching on to, oh, like, you're probably going to mess with his memories and make him think he grew up on Krypton, so it makes it easier to control him. You keep him under this fog of, this is what he wants. He fights for Krypton, and it makes it easier to make him capitulate and do what you want, because it's like, yeah, I'm doing this for Krypton's sake, so it lures him into this false dream of inception that allows Brainiac to run rampant in his body. At the same time, like, Kara, Lois, and Jimmy did break in. Kara had made this point that, like, right, they'll go save Clark, she'll deal with her father, but it's like, yeah, but what happens after that? It's like, well, you take Clark and leave. It's like, what about you? She's like, I have nowhere else to go. And Jimmy's like, yeah, but the universe is pretty big. That's why I feel like when it's all said and done, Kara's not going to stick around on Earth. She's probably going to travel to other planets and see the universe with her own eyes, and not through the lens of being controlled by Brainiac. I think, but it's still the thing of, they might not be living on the same planet, but she might visit from time to time if she can. There are videos, and Waller and everything will probably make it extremely hard for her to ever come back to this planet, but Clark could always visit her off planet, or I don't know how they deal with that in the future, considering like how she has been plastered. I mean, to be fair, Clark has gotten villainized too. I mean, Superman got villainized too, so we'll see. Maybe in the aftermath of kind of all of this, like, Waller's situation might be like undone, and it's just kind of seen like, oh, like maybe Kara and Clark will be seen in a different light. Well, once again, I need to like delineate that. Superman and Supergirl will be seen in a different light in the eyes of the world. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they like play that out. But I did like that Kara was saying like, oh, Jimmy, I just wanted to kind of let you know that how I feel about you. I admire you as the leader of your planet, so I know you won't fail this mission, and then immediately super speeds away. It's like, it's really adorable, because she does like Jimmy, and obviously Jimmy likes her too. It's just, she doesn't know how to. Once again, Clark like teased her about it in episode 6, and I think that probably makes it even more. She's kind of like, wait, like, was Clark right? And she doesn't know how to express. Like, I think this is the first time she's ever been like having feelings for another person. It's the first time. So, and especially because he was like the first person like she's really interacted with and connected with like that on, when she was looking for Clark on Earth. But either way, Kara's trying to fight her dad, and she thinks she beats him just when Clark thinks he wins, but sadly he's possessed Clark's body, and now he's in control. And there is this interesting thing where it's like, Brainiac talks about, like, right, he talks about something that I feel like isn't always discussed. Once again, I'm not a comic book person, so people who are comic book people, do let me know if the comics ever cover this, but my association with, like, the whole genetically engineered thing, I'm like, oh, that's so neat. Because the only thing I know, I always bring it back to it, is Krypton, because the entire show is about Krypton, so, like, you got to learn more about the society and how things work. And so Krypton's always usually a small part of most Superman stories, so you never really get to know much about Krypton, except for that TV show, which I thought was pretty interesting. But yeah, like, there are no natural births on Krypton. Maybe at some point in time there were, but eventually that died out. I don't remember if that was ever explored, but yeah, they basically take the DNA of two parents and then they genetically engineered a child. That's how procreation happens on Krypton. You basically put two people together. At least in Krypton, they made it more of a status thing of like, I don't like, because once again, there's like a social class system on Krypton, at least on the TV show. I don't know if that's typically the case in the comics and stuff, but yeah, it's like, yeah, they're meant to be genetically stronger than the previous generation, and Brainiac was meant to kind of oversee a lot of that, but he saw weakness in Krypton, and it's just like that same weakness was Krypton's undoing, and he wants to birth an even stronger Krypton. And he even says, like, that weakness, it's like, he even feels it himself. He's like, when I look at you, all I see is that little girl in the escape pod that was reaching out to me. And it's like, I do see you as my daughter, but I have to nip that in the bud because this is for Krypton. It's like, well, it's for your own self-adulation. It's like, you want to build Krypton. It's like, you're kind of driven by your imperative, but that imperative was so twisted and contorted because you believe like, no, Krypton was wrong. I will build the perfect Krypton in my image because that's what's kind of written in my code. It's in me. It's my directive. Jimmy and Lois got there in time and tried to use the kryptonite against Clark, but it's like, well, that can't do much. Well, it can only hurt Clark and Kara, because it's like, well, I'm a machine. This isn't my body, so I can't feel it. In fact, I can just take myself somewhere else mentally. I could just shut myself down and make it so that Clark and Kara feel it, but I don't. So Jimmy, they're stuck in a rock and a hard place, and so he gets rid of he jettisons Jimmy, Kara, and Lois out of the ship. And now it's like, right, he has Clark's body and he has the kryptonite. That's one of the only pieces that is still around. No, to be fair, it's like they are engineering like some of that at because Slade had put it on his blade and given it to Waller, so they have some on Earth, but they don't have like a large quantity of it. And even then, it's like, because I don't know if he doesn't know that the Kryptonian tech, like his robots and stuff, can be affected by kryptonite too. It isn't just Clark, so that does give Waller and her people an advantage. But I'm curious to see what he does now holding the kryptonite, because he probably thinks like, okay, this is the only like piece out there, not knowing there still is some being engineered on Earth. I mean, the problem is he's eventually going to go to Earth, but the problem is both to their benefit and detriment. Detriment in regards of, they villainize Superman, but it's going to kind of work out in the end when Brainiac shows up in Clark's body, and that's going to be a whole issue in itself, and it's probably going to lean into them being able to vilify Superman even more. But it's like, right, they've already been preparing for this. They've got all the machinery and stuff, but it's not just going to be Clark. It's going to be an entire robot army. Not less because when he was fighting Kara and them, like, his face is on full display, so it probably isn't going to be like hiding beneath a mask. I mean, Kara had that to some extent on some points. She had her face out and about, but there were points where she was covered in a mask, but it came off during their fight in episode 5. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how that plays out, but it is a frustrating thing of, they weren't able to save Clark. In fact, they're kind of thinking like maybe Clark's gone, and Lois, wanting to try and make things right, decides to like take a deep dive. She has the device and she puts it on and tries to connect with Clark, trying to hopefully be able to reach out to him and pull him to the surface. So that's where things sadly currently stand. So we'll see how this all plays out. I would believe this season's only going to be 10 episodes like season 1 was. So there are only 2 episodes left in the season. So I'd assume it's going to be a part 1 and part 2. But it's like, how will this all play out? Because that is the thing of like, this whole Brainiac thing will be resolved, but obviously there's still going to be the through line of Lex and Waller. Where will they stand in the general public's eye? How will Clark stand in the general public's eye? Well, Superman stand in the general public's eye when it's all said and done. It's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out with these next 2 episodes, how they wrap this up and what they leave open-ended to set up for the future potentially, Very excited to see what happens next. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.